is QuickyBaby and welcome to Tankfest. So everybody's got a favourite tank, and obviously one of the most popular vehicles that a lot of people come to the Tank Museum to see is the Tiger. But there's another different kind of beast that you might see behind me now. It is, of course, the Panther. Now, the Panther was first used in the Battle of Kursk in 1943, and this was obviously a change in design. You see how angled that frontal slope is on the vehicle, and that's because the Germans basically copied the Soviets. Now, when they went in against the Soviets, they were very surprised about how efficient the T-34 was, and obviously a lot of this comes down to the angled front and how cheap that they could be manufactured. A lot of people would go as far as to say that the Panther was just a far more fantastic, wonderful, expensive vehicle, and it just absolutely trounced the T-34 in almost every single way. But I know a certain Belarusian who's probably going to contest that statement quite viciously.
Well, I think, in my opinion, Panther is great, big, magnificent, high-quality tank, but bigger is not always better. However, in this case, quantity can be more important than quality.
And that was definitely the case with regards to the T-34. Over 80,000 of these vehicles were produced in World War II, while the Germans only managed to produce 6,000 Tigers. When you're outnumbered 10 to 1, doesn't matter how much more engineering you pumped into something. If the T-34 can swarm the Panther and take it out, well, it's job done.
Friends, I think my husband got a little bit too excited about this little Willy.
Oh my, I just spotted some fan favorites. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, take a look at this Yak Panther right behind me. And alongside it, we have its baby brother. Oh, look at this, we've got a Hetzer as well. This thing is about as much fun as you can have at Tier 4, I think. Talking about Tier 4 tank destroyers, I think Tanya has spotted something of her origin as well. We have an Su-76M, or I guess this is actually a Tier 3 tank destroyer in the game. And of course, it wouldn't be a trip to the Tank Museum if I didn't get to hug a vehicle that I am quite renowned for having a bit of a thing for. Ladies and gentlemen, it is of course the one and only, the Comet, the best British vehicle from World War II. Tanya, have to have a hug. I'm going to film the hug with the Comet. Just leave me here, I'll have my moment. Okay, Tanya, just go. Gotta go now. See you later. So here we have a Swedish tank behind. This is something that I was quite excited to see in the museum again, because last year, well, I saw this about 3-4 years ago, and to be honest, my knowledge of vehicles and military history has been deepened by World of Tanks. That's the thing that really sparked my interest in these magnificent feats of engineering that have got this like real tangible link to such a historic event, right? A terribly historic event. And this is the Stridsvagn 103. I guess in the game it's called the B, but in here it's called the S tank, right? And this thing is definitely one of my favorite vehicles in the game. It's just made me really appreciate, this is a heat shield here to be stopping high explosive anti-tank rounds from going through the top. But just look how angled this armour is. It's just absolutely incredible. And one of the most amazing things about this tank is, of course, that it has a hydropneumatic suspension. So it actually, the gun doesn't have a turret, it's fixed to the hull. And so the vehicle goes whoop, 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 and it digs itself in to be able to elevate and depress the gun. And so what this means is that if you have your gun pointing directly at your opponents, then you've also got your armor working to its maximum capacity. And in real life, you don't have silly things like overmatch mechanics, I guess. So what's really interesting about the S-Tank as well is that it actually has two engines, one British and one American. And I'm not sure, I'll have to check this up later. I wonder if one helps going forwards and one helps going backwards. Now this would have had a 3-man crew, and apparently there would have been kind of like a remote control radio operator in the back who would have been able to reverse the vehicle out of a tricky situation if the need had arisen. Hey, you ever want to be inside a tank? Well, here's your best chance because this one's been cut in half. Come take a look at this.
Light pockets of armour expected outbound. Matching forces.
Stop! Well done. Robert, head on 600 yards down the hill and move up behind that rock.
Hey, come on, we found the FV4202 finally. This is one of my favourite vehicles inside the Vehicle Conservation Centre, which I think they only open up for Tankfest, although maybe that was from a couple of years ago. Now the reason why I love the FV4202 is not just because it's British, right? I love the FV4202 because it's kind of a go-between from the Centurion to the Chieftain, right? Now the FV4202 is special because it actually tested having the mantlet inside the turret, behind where you'd think the mantlet would be. And also, you notice how low profile the vehicle is. Now that was possible because the driver is not sitting upright, the driver is prone, well, in a reclined position. And that is a feature that's actually been adopted in many of the modern main battle tanks. Oh, and while we're here, it's also very convenient because the FV4004 Conway is right next to it. Now I love this Tier 9 British tank destroyer because this was the very rushed Allied, or shall I say the British response to the terror of the fact that the Soviet Union brought out the IS-3 during the victory parades in 1945. This was an effort to basically get as big of a gun as possible, in this case 120mm, on a Centurion hull so that you could actually fight an IS-3, right? If the need had come for the Brits to go to town with the Soviet Union. And just look how much of a horrible turret this is. Can you believe that this is kind of a counter for the IS-3? I think it's just trying to make most of being caught with your pants down, to be honest. So a lot like the FV4202, effectively this was just a test bed, and I think this is the only prototype that was produced. But it was an interesting go-between from the Centurion to what would become the Conqueror. And a lot like the FV4202, it was testing an idea. However, I'm not really so sure this one was so useful. This was the only prototype built, and that's why it's an absolute pleasure to come to the Tank Museum in the Vehicle Conservation Centre and to check it out. So Tanya, how do you feel being surrounded by these steel behemoths?
You know, being a Belarusian, armored vehicles have always been a big part of my culture. So when you walk on the street, you see tanks all over the place. But being in the UK and living in the UK for the past 4 years, you don't see many of them, and you don't have open access to the tanks. So coming to Tankfest every year is very refreshing and reminds me of home.
So I've been going to Tankfest for a few years now, and to be honest, the tanks don't really change, although still seeing them every year is absolutely wonderful. But there's one thing that does change every year, and while there are some familiar faces, I get the pleasure of meeting so many of you. Over the 8 hours of meet and greet that I had over the weekend, I must have met about 500 of you lovely ladies and gents, and just thank you all for being so wonderful and respectful. And while it truly was my pleasure to meet all of you, some people even had some things for me, bizarrely. I'm not putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's cool, dude. Okay. So Ryan, I had the pleasure of meeting last year, and like pretty much every Tankfest for the last few years, has brought me a photo. Ryan, what is this? How have you made me look like not a complete scrub? This is absolutely outrageous. Have you seen this? What the hell, Ryan? That's incredible. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Okay, so what do you want me to write, buddy?
Yeah, just answer, you know?
No, I feel like this is a work of art. I have to sign it in a specific way.
It's fine.
Okay, what, like up here or down there?
Go gold.
Okay, yeah, we'll go gold. We'll write gold on it. That's beautiful. I like it.
This part area, that's fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
Ryan, there you go, buddy.
That's great, thank you.
That looks top. Sweet. Okay, so we'll take a photo. You want a photo?
And moments like these are just so important for me because as a YouTuber and a Twitch streamer, sometimes you can become dehumanized in a way. You start to see views, you see likes, you see dislikes, you see how many comments you've got. And really the comments are about as much human interaction as I can get with the community. Meeting all of you puts faces directly behind those numbers and I get a sense of what you all like specifically and what you want to see more of. And I have to admit, every time I come back from Tankfest, I feel more motivated to be able to continue to do what I've been loving to do for the last few years. And thank you all very much for it. For many, of course, the highlight of Tankfest has to be the biggest display of moving armour in the world. And once you get out in the arena and you check out vehicles like this British Centurion, you can truly feel the tank power as they drive past. The engine vibrations will shake your chest, and just seeing many of your favourite vehicles going around the arena is absolutely awe-inspiring. They even have a replica of one of the Mark tanks from World War I driving around with some British troops there. Alternatively, maybe American tanks are more your thing, and check out this M103 for which 300 were produced, but they never saw combat because they were kind of phased out in favour of tanks like this M60. 15,000 M60s were produced and they took part in the Gulf War, and when they encountered the Iraqi army, only a single vehicle fell to over 100, I guess, kind of Soviet import tanks. Now you're checking out the Chieftain, which was the British successor to the Centurion and was in production all the way up until the 80s, but was notoriously unreliable. And now, here is some eye candy, an IS-3 driving around the arena, which is very unusual to see outside of a post-Soviet country. Now, the first time that I got to see an IS-3 was when I first visited Belarus in 2013. And in 2015, during the Victory Day celebrations, I actually got to see a bunch of these driving down the streets of Minsk. We just saw a Type 59 there very shortly, and here you go, a German Leopard tank. And these vehicles provide a shock and awe display which really kicks off Tankfest. There was also a guest appearance by the French B1, arguably one of the most powerful vehicles at the start of the war. After the defeat of France in 1940, the Germans subsequently used them for the remainder. All in all, there's just so much to see at Tankfest that if you do decide to go, don't think that you can squeeze it all in on one day, otherwise you're going to feel like you're really rushed. My top tip is to go there either maybe a day earlier before Tankfest and just to check out the museum and go and take pictures of all your favourite vehicles and just take it all in and get an idea of where everything is. And then actually on the Tankfest day, spend the morning in the Vehicle Conservation Centre and just spend the entire afternoon checking out the tank glory in the arena. Now on the way back from Tankfest, I decided to surprise Tanya, taking us to somewhere which I thought she would like the look of.
That's the one that'll do play. That'll do.
Durdle door.
What is this?
What's Durdle door?
What's Durdle door?
You're gonna find out. It's a surprise. You have no idea what it is.
No idea what it is. Oh, that looks incredible.
Phil, M4, what do you actually think that Durdle door is?
It's a place near the beach. It's
Well, that was obvious.
it's a wooden door swimming in the sea. So it's like the girl from the Titanic is still like somewhere over here, like in the water.
Wow.
On the door.
Ah, wow, I like it. Okay, so we're on the south coast of England right now, and we're at a place called Durdle Door, and Tanya...
And I totally did not expect that.
You haven't actually seen the door, you haven't actually seen the door yet.
There is
More of it.
You haven't seen the actual door, this is just a fabulous rock formation. I'm not even sure if they're getting this. Look at this, everyone. Absolutely ridiculous. So here we are with the Cove of Durdle door behind us, and we're going to go and actually check out the arch now, which is over towards the side.
I think this is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life.
If that's not a review, I don't know what is. And then so effectively what happens is, and then eventually the crack will turn into a cave, and then the cave will turn into like a tunnel, yeah. And then it will just like.
And so all in all, I had an amazing time this year. A massive thank you to everyone who spent hours in the queue waiting to meet me. It was my absolute pleasure. Michael, Phil, thank you for being such good friends and having an amazing time together. And a massive thank you to Tanya for the camera work and the editing to make this vlog possible. Stay tuned, guys. Got more coming soon.